and welcome to episode 7 of Something Good Podcast, our podcast which seeks to discover interesting films through the guise mostly of physical media, but you just never know these days. I'm joined by another extremely special guest, somebody I've been trying to do collaborations with. They're talking about doing collaborations. All my fault, by the way. That hasn't happened yet. Thank you very much, SJS. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I have actually kind of funny story. So a couple of nights ago, after I had a chat with Ronin, like I went to sleep straight after that, and I actually had a dream of you guys and this podcast. But even though I'm bisexual, it wasn't one of those dreams, I promise. Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you about the dream. So we were in Chris's cinema in that dream. So Chris owned the cinema, and we were in your big office in a really nice cinema. And again, we were kind of planning this podcast on that cinema, but then Chris said to me that we need to actually watch all these films that we are going to talk about in your cinema. And then me and Ronin went to sit on the nice red seats, and we got some popcorn. And it's funny about popcorn, because when we talked with Ronin a couple of days ago, was that we said that neither of us like popcorn and we don't eat in the cinema, and we hate people who eat in the cinema. So all that conversation from that Ronin chat came to my dream. So that was really funny. I had to say that. I just had to say that, yeah.
Interesting how a conversation about death and thrash metal can lead to popcorn and other of us. It's interesting about the popcorn, because I really don't do popcorn at all in the cinema. And again, it's a bit like me and this. Yes, we're talking before we started there about not drinking tea or coffee. This look of horror and disgust, being a fan of a cinema and not eating popcorn, it's like some people can't like a total disconnect about those two things.
It's very strange.
Or one of the funny things about the dream, one more thing about the dream was that I asked Ronin that can we watch Renny Harlin's The Covenant first, because I just watched that on Thursday. So that was funny. And I might talk about that film here today, but we'll see.
Let's see if it comes up. Also here returning is Solitary. Ronin, again, not Solitary. You're making a habit of this, sir.
I know, it's getting out of hand. Thank you very much for having me on, though.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Not a problem at all. Like, what I will say, though, is Communal's Ronin isn't quite the same, impactful name, catchy name as Solitary Ronin, so, definitely don't be thinking about changing. Just never mind all these streams.
Just Ronin. Yeah. The only dreams I have are to try and cross crocodile-infested water by running on them, and I usually end up getting torn to bits. Don't know what that means.
That's an interesting one. I used to
get away from Africa.
I used to get chased through a house by an old woman. That's my one. Stay away from Africa. Yeah. Life advice from Ronan, there you go. From the Scotsman.
Yeah, welcome to Dreams and What They Mean. Episode 5.
Yeah.
That could be a Splinter podcast. If anybody's interested in that, by the way, just let us know down in the comments. And if you could just include one of your own weird dreams, then that would be a great start. Anyway, we might talk about films just for a little while. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with what we've been watching recently. Any kind of rabbit holes have been falling down, any of that kind of stuff. And as usual, we'll let our super guest start. What interesting things have you been watching recently? Yes.
Yeah. So last Thursday I was possessed, so I decided that I'm gonna rewatch Renny Harlin's The Covenant, which was a childhood favorite of mine, and it's one of the worst films ever. So it's about the Sons of Ipswich. So it's this teenager frat boy, witches, and in this story again, when the teenagers turn 18, they gain more power. Suddenly they ascend. There's lightning in the sky and they become more powerful witches. But these 4 sons of Ipswich find out that there's a 5th son of Ipswich. He's more powerful, he's evil, he's sadistic. They have to fight him. So the main character, Caleb, has to ask his father for more power. And then his father says, I will you my powers. And then he gets this lightning from the sky and he's all powerful, and he ascends basically at the same time, so he gets that adult power as well. But this is an already a dated movie, even though it's from 2006. It has that kind of early digital artificial blue color to it, and just this awful like plastic frat boy characters that, again, I'm sure that many young people find really hot and relatable, but when you actually mature up, you kind of think that, yeah, these are just assholes. I don't like any of these. And it has the world famous Sebastian Stan from the Marvel movies. Yeah, this is one of his early roles, and what a great performance that is. And there's lots of great dialogue, like when they talk about Stephen King, Dreamcatcher, that was the shit. Hey, but actually I wanted to talk about The Shining. Yeah, and then Harry Potter can kiss my ass. When these young witches are just, again, they need to use their powers and be all masculine and be full of testosterone, so they need to destroy Harry Potter when they do that. But yeah, it's an awful movie with like a early 2000s like new metal soundtrack, so its soundtrack is absolutely horrible as well. But somehow it still has some of those funny scenes, and again, I could quote much of the dialogue. I see that thing between your legs. It's like a penis, but only smaller. So that's a fun line.
Oh dear, this is quite funny because this is a bit like Peter and his projector. SJS with Renny Harlin didn't waste no time, straight in for the man who is famed for watching lots of cinema's greatest movies and then famed arthouse movies for most of his life. Straight in with the Renny Harlin. I've just pulled up the letterbox page for the Covenant, and some of the reviews are absolutely terrific. It is a 2.2 in Letterboxd, which I think may be the lowest score I have ever seen on for an aggregated score. But some other great lines. I'm going to make you my wiatch. I've always said I'd die for Sebastian Stan, and I think it just did. Which is great.
I think the other guys are way hotter than him, but
I mean, on
Taylor
SJS's
Kitsch is in it from
recommendation,
Friday Night Lights, I think. Yeah.
on SJS's recommendation, I bought it for, I think it was actually about £1, and after watching it once, I sold it for I think a penny. I think that's what CEX the price is going for. So if you've got copies of The Covenant, you can make yourself a penny. But what's sadder is the fact that Renny Harlin does a commentary on the disc, and he does sound like he's making a masterpiece. He's so earnest about it and goes into the mythos of the characters, and it's just like, I mean, it's interesting on the level of how they shot this and how they did it, but he's speaking really earnestly about this film as if it was, it's a fascinating commentary. It is a hilarious commentary. You'd argue it's probably worth spending a penny to buy somebody's old copy, but just listen to the commentary.
Yeah.
Isolate the soundtrack.
I gotta tell you guys, I have never wanted to watch a movie more in my entire life. I just have to find a decent copy of it, you know. No, it won't cost me much. Well, I found a Blu-ray copy, but it's £6.
What? That's outrageous. Sadly, it's not
£6.40 actually. That is outrageous. Oh, yet, indeed.
Yes.
What a great start, though.
The Renny Harlin box set's coming.
What? I tell you what. See if the Renny Harlin box set does come, and SJS doesn't ask to do an extra for it. They're messing up. They're missing an opportunity right there.
Yes.
Great start. Great first recommendation from recent watches. Yes. Like I will say that Taylor Kitsch from Friday Night Lights is in it. It ticks a certain box for me as well. He should have been a bigger star than he was, but that's cool.
Yeah, he's the main character. He's pretty hot.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
John Carter.
Cool. Okay, Ronin, how can you beat Renny Harlin's The Covenant?
Well, I wouldn't say it's similar, but I suppose it's in the same sort of genre. Not really. I think The Covenant's in its own genre. But this is a film that I've done a random review on. It absolutely blew me away, and it's Messiah Vivo from Radiance. This is absolutely special. made by two people who were going to write the script for American Graffiti for Lucas, because they all came together for Lucas. They would go on to direct Howard the Duck, bizarrely. But this is sensational stuff. It's American Gothic, but it's in California. A woman goes to find her missing artist father in this little seaside town, fairly reminiscent of the town in the fog. This is 1971, didn't come out until 73, I think. And it's basically a mix of Night of the Living Dead, Carnival of Souls. It prefigures Dawn of the Dead in one section. It prefigures Suspiria. It's got amazing production design. The house that she stays in of her father's, this kind of studio, has these like human-sized paintings, and like, so it just has this bizarre aura. The whole film is really odd. The atmosphere is odd and creepy. It's kind of this amalgam blender of all these feelings and thoughts and styles, but it just comes together, and it literally blew me away with how amazing it is. I mean, I can understand people watching it and just going, "Nah, I don't really get that," but if it hooks you in and you just love that kind of oddness, it's just an absolute masterwork.
Yeah, I seen your random review, and it seemed to echo what a lot of other people were saying at the time, which is like this release that was announced, Hardbox from Radiance, is very worthy of that kind of treatment and that kind of showcase that even that kind of release gives something even without watching the film.
Yeah, because I didn't know anything about it, so I was a bit confused why it had a Hardbox special edition, but now I get it. I mean, the standard edition's out in November, I think, because the Hardbox is sold out, but I now get it because it's just phenomenal on every level. Even though, again, people might look at it and go, yeah, that's all right. It's got cult written all over it, but it's just sensationally good.
Nice. As usual.
Yeah, I haven't seen it,
myself.
so I cannot comment. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But plus, I can't watch it for another 12 months. I mean, October's past now, and
I know this thing.
you can't watch scary films outside. Indeed, like. Yeah. The manual for watching movies says in November only certain types of movies can be watched in November as well. Sad.
Yeah.
Oh well. Well, with that in mind, I am going to talk about a horror movie. So, coming the end of the season, one that I was thinking, how can I do this in the channel, and I just haven't got around to it yet. I'm going to talk about Imprint's Let's Scare Jessica to Death. If anybody has seen it.
Yes.
Oh, yes. The fellow Imprint fan there, the man who was never going to buy another Imprint release and then bought a lot of Imprint releases. Yes. Anyway, Let's Scare Jessica to Death is a horror movie that is basically about a family. Well, I say a family because it's just kind of a husband, wife, and their friend moved to the country to a house, very Amityville horror-ish kind of style, I would say, and she seems to be recovering from some sort of mental trauma, and this is the new break for her in the new place that she's going to be. Fresh start, and they get there, and like, as I say, Amityville horror-ish, there's just something a bit wrong about the whole place, about the house, about the people, the town that they're in. Everything's just not right, and the question is, of course, is everything a bit Pete Tong, i.e. wrong, or is this woman just losing her marbles? Are we seeing the film through the guise of her insane eyes? And her sanity is questioned, and as we go through, and it's kind of set, as any good scary movie has, there's like a lake at the back. It has all of the tick boxes of horror movie from the 70s, and it has like Zora Lambert, who's the main actress in it, I think is absolutely terrific, and it should have been like a star of about like 20 movies from that time, of just being like the face, like a Shelley Duvall almost thing from that. But like a really interesting, charming, but very much a 70s vibe, which I think a 70s vibe horror movie already has a good bit of gravitas to start it off with, you know, in terms of being a very solid watch for that time. But yeah, and like fabulous ending as well. Like it truly, you know, no spoilers. Great ending.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the references in Messiah of Evil, I think, and people do compare it to Let's Scare Jessica to Death. So if you like Let's Scare Jessica to Death, Messiah of Evil should be up your street because it's that same odd atmosphere.
Ah, see, I didn't even know that. See, didn't plan this. People always think that this is scripted.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
No, it's not. Honest. It's too much work.
I don't know. So that's my first, and that's all I'll ever talk about Scurry season, because again it's November now, and that was just like a reference or a nod to the fact that October comes before November, in terms of
Yes.
the chronological calendar. We'll see. Yes. What have we got next? How can you follow up the comment?
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible.
Well, it's actually really hard to choose which one I should talk about. Is it Scorsese's best movie, The Departed? I cannot stop making this joke. Or should I talk about the Rambo movies in this nice...
Oh
toy?
yes.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
If ever there was
They had
a
well
reason to watch the video version of the podcast, then guess yes, just give you that reason indeed.
Yeah, but I'm actually gonna talk about something that is actually good. So I watched this yesterday. This one I have on physical media. It's Red Angel by Yasucho Masumura.
yeah, that's a stunner.
And yeah, absolutely adored this film. It became like an instant favorite, and I'm gonna make a bold statement that it might even be like top 10 for war films of all time. It was that
Wow.
good.
It is phenomenal.
But even though it's a war film, but it's also kind of like fuck patriarchy type of film. Again, it shows all the men as kind of evil pigs, just like they often are in real life. But again, the Ayako Wakao, the main actress, she plays a young nurse in the Sino-Japanese war, and she has to take care of these awful soldiers that treat her awfully. But she has this kind of conviction that she wants to help even the rapists and the killers. So there's like very interesting commentary about, I think, the human condition there, and most of this film is kind of situated in the kind of close quarters where all the patients are and where the nurses and doctors help the patients. And another kind of major character here is Dr. Okabe, and he is kind of a very interesting character. He's one of the main characters that isn't like a totally awful, but he has a soul and everything, and his relationship with our main character is very interesting, and his end in the end was pretty, I don't want to spoil it, but very interesting. But yeah, again, it's actually from my favorite year of cinema history, 1966, and that watching this kind of made me even more of a fan of that year, because all of my favorites seem to come from that year for some reason. And this is actually very interesting to compare with some of the other Masumura films, because I had seen 3 others. So I had seen a couple of the early ones like Giants and Toys and the Blue Sky Maiden, which isn't really available on physical media, but that's kind of like a Douglas Sirk type of melodrama with lots of comedy. So very different stylistically than this, because this is very bleak and grim. But I actually, when I thought about this more earlier today, I realized how similar they are in many ways, because in that film they also, again, he explores the fact how women are treated in Japanese society and how women can be trapped by the traditional gender roles when they cannot get, for example, a job, and they are just trapped in marriages and everything. So in that way, this is actually a very similar movie that shows how men need women, but that doesn't mean that women have power, but it means that the men are pieces of shit, basically. So yeah, very, very good film, and again, an instant favorite, and would recommend this to everybody. And a good-looking Blu-ray as well. I haven't watched the extras yet, but apparently there's like an audio commentary by David Desser, and he's one of my favorite critics, so I will watch that stuff later on.
Yeah, it's an absolute stunner. I mean, Masamura, I think there is an extra on one of his films by somebody who has seen all of his filmography, which is quite a lot, and he kind of says there's a purple patch for Masamura and within that purple patch, it's Black Teskar, it's Red Angel, it's Giants and Toys, Blind Beast. So the stuff kind of before is good and okay, and the stuff after is kind of good and okay, but that it does have a purple patch in the middle, and Red Angel does look gorgeous. And again, it is not only about the more pointlessness of war, as if one day we'll maybe learn, but probably not, in females' role in Japan, because obviously Japan does have a weird thing, you know, clubs with women dressed as schoolgirls and stuff, and obviously there's a bit of a rape kind of, not culture, but a kind of, you know, there's lots of films, there's a whole, you know, section of films about rape and stuff like that. There goes the monetization, Chris, sorry. But Masamura is fascinating. Again, it's one of those, another Japanese director that I'd never really heard of, and you know, kudos to Arrow, you know, as much as we kind of say, oh, a 4K of Waterworld, a 4K of Prince of Thieves, but if that provides us with an opportunity to see films by people like Masamura, then that's worth it.
Yeah, it's funny how I'd watched Red Angel after Giants and Toys, Black Report,
Yeah.
Black Test, whichever.
Yeah,
And those films are very much about industrial Japan, and about kind of how the male-dominated part of society and how they're all even toxic with each other. And then watching Red Angel after that, and this kind of like almost heart-wrenching tale of this woman who just wants to help, and the ways in which men force her to help is just like, oh, just the depravity of humanity sometimes. Like, it's like even taken out of war context, it's just so awful, and your heart wrenches for that poor woman and that poor character. That's just so magnificently played, and like, it's really powerful filmmaking that you ascribe to there, SJS, and kind of, you know, and how you set up. I seen your 5-star review of it, and I went, well, I mean, that's a very good 5-star film. You know, that's one of that I can really totally get on board with as a 5-star movie, because it is one of those that you're watching it. There's obviously events happening on the screen, but it's wrenching you up inside. You know, it's kind of affecting you as you watch each encounter with another male throughout the movie, and you're like, oh god, this is like, war sucks, but war really sucks sometimes as well, you know. But just a fabulous choice, yeah, to talk about, and one that I think, you know, there's three of us, absolute champion from start to finish, without doubt, yeah.
Yeah, I know you said you were going to watch it, so I was happy to see the 5 stars.
Yeah.
Because it's excellent.
Excellent choice. Ronan?
Well, I can't really follow that up with a great film, but it's the Italian Collection and Tough Ones by Umberto Lenzi, which is just hilarious, with Maurizio Merli and Thomas Milian as a hunchback for some reason. There's no real reason for him being a hunchback, but he's just a hunchback, because Milian probably just went, I want to play a hunchback, so that was it, because obviously he's quite a strong character. This is the usual independent cop, the kind of Dirty Harry who is caught up with red tape. I mean, Arthur Kennedy here plays the aging American actor who goes to Italy to make crime films. You know, Joseph Cotton did, and Anthony Quinn did as well, and various others. So Arthur Kennedy is obviously way over the hill. He's in his 70s and would probably be retired even in Italy. But he's the captain who always tells him, you know, you have to stay in line, you have to follow orders, and obviously he wants to just go and shoot criminals. He wants to kind of build this crew that just doesn't have to bother with the law and pretty much just execute scumbags. But it's a lot of fun, and as usual with these kind of era-led films, nobody gets away with, you know, how certain films, mostly American, you know who's going to die and who's not going to die because there's certain rules. Well, these years-led Italian films don't have rules. You can be women, children with a limp, animals, doesn't matter. You're going to get shot or blown up.
Mowed down, yeah.
And again, Umberto Lenzi is hardly the world's greatest director, but this goes along at a fair clip. There's not much fat on it. It gets to the point, and again, there is very much like Dirty Harry and under underlying theme of, you know, how far do you take the law, and is it right just to execute scumbags in the streets? It does have a hilarious car chase, generally all in tiny little Fiats, as most of these things were in Italy. Again, perhaps not the greatest film in the world, but just a good time with another Years of Lead film.
You do not get to talk about this film and not try and pronounce its genre. I know what you did there, Ronan. That was
it's a hard look at the justice system and the rules that handcuff the police sometimes.
Indeed. I could watch that genre of film all day. Those Years Laid films are just kind of all, I mean, very earnest but dumb in much the same way. You know, they often are trying to say something very political through the guise of the director, but let's not forget what people came to the cinema to watch in the first place, you know. And like you say, car chases.
Yeah, there's one of them, Live Like a Man, no, Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man, or something like that, where you've got two cops who are basically pushed to the limit, and their boss throughout the whole film tells them, you have to follow orders, you have to calm down, you can't do this kind of stuff. And spoiler alert, at the end of the film, it's actually their boss that like blows everybody away. It's just like, I think you're telling us not to do that, and it's like, and they're just like, fair play. The end.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, as I prefer Renny Harlin, Jean-Luc Godard, and The Departed.
Well, a trifecta though. That's amazing. But I do love how a lot of Italian cinema of that decade or time is all like, it's like that overdubbed voice, you know, with the trailer that says, "What happens if a man gets pushed too far?" Yeah. You know, every single film, no matter what the genre is, no matter whether it's a giallo or a poliziesque or anything like that, even Elio Petru's Working Class Go to Heaven is that same principle of, you know, this man who's good trying to do a day's work, but just get pushed over the edge. What's going to happen?
I mean, we do kind of laugh about it, but obviously you have to remember at the time, you know, judges were being blown up, people were being kidnapped, you know, police were getting shot in the streets, you know. So it wasn't the best time to live in Italy.
Yeah, definitely not. But that wasn't just in the movies, that was in real life, as you say.
Yeah.
Okay. My turn. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, well, the release that pretty much everybody's talking about at the moment, probably, you know, will be in a lot of top 10 lists this year. It's Todd Brownings's The Freaks box set from Criterion. That, I mean, last weekend, I absolutely devoured the entire set. Has anybody seen these films yet?
I've only seen Freaks, I haven't seen the other two.
Right, so
I haven't seen them, but
yeah. So Freaks is a great film. I mean, of all three films, it's the one with the best print for sure. The Freaks is the story of this underculture sideshow characters in the circus, that I can see why it was controversial at the time, but it very much, it tries to celebrate those people in some ways, having a sense of community and a sense of like battling against the man and all of that kind of stuff. And you kind of come away from it going, well, that's just kind of amazing. A film that it's almost as if somebody with modern sensibilities went back and time traveled and went, right, I'm going to make this film in this time, and you know, kind of for record going forward, because there is an awful lot of modern sensibilities in it, and you know, explained by Todd Browning's own background, the way that he kind of started off life and then kind of early stages of his entertainment career. The whole thing's just amazing. But The Unknown and The Mystic are also fabulous movies, like really brilliant. The Mystic is, I mean, you can't watch The Mystic and not think of Nightmare Alley, because it is very much a very similar idea. So you have these circus performers from Hungary that somebody from America says, oh, you've got this act, I think you can make money of this, and it's very much how the magic is made kind of thing. So these illusionists, but actually showing you how they're doing it. It's just wonderful. And then The Unknown is Lon Chaney as the man with no arms, can only use his feet, which was done by a double, and then Joan Crawford is this kind of damsel in distress that he has taken a shine or a fancy to. Again, within the kind of idea of circus or otherwise. The whole box set's just absolutely phenomenal. The extras that go along with it, in fact, the interview with the that's in the middle of it is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, what a release, and what a joy of like 2023 physical media releases. You get something like Freaks, which was not on my radar. A lot of people were very excited by it, and I kind of got carried away with their excitement for it. Kind of thinking, well, I will pick it up immediately and watch it so that I can kind of be part of the conversation. And here we are. All three films I think are great.
Yeah, it's one of those things I never thought Freaks would get to Blu-ray. I thought certain people would just never let it be released. It's amazing it still exists, to be honest, because of certain attitudes to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just love the way it's kind of balanced. Yeah, because I like the fact it's balanced. The small prince who gets taken advantage of, he's not actually a very nice character. You know, he's not. So they're not all painted like saints. You know, he's very selfish and he's unaware of somebody else who actually cares about him. And he is a bit of a jerk, so it's not as if they're all kind of painted as saints. And the last kind of 10 minutes is genuinely effective and genuinely creepy when we actually find out what's in the box, like the kind of wraparound story, because it's mostly told in flashback. And that kind of revelation is fairly disturbing. It's still disturbing all these years later.
Yeah. It's funny to think that Freaks was the inspiration for both David Fincher's Seven and Pulp Fiction. You know, that's a what's in the box kind of thing, except in this case we get shown it. Yeah. And almost like I watched Qui-Gon recently, and the last story of Qui-Gon has a similar kind of idea of that as well. So all these things kind of bleed into each other. But yeah, Freaks, absolutely terrific. There's another recommendation for it, because if you're a fan of cinema.
Yeah, I'm so glad that the other two are really good as well. So
fabulous.
Still to watch them. So.
I think The Unknown actually might be my favourite of the three. You know, a week removed from it, kind of. I thought Mystic was my favourite, but actually there's something about The Unknown that really tickles my fancy. And again, these kind of not perfect characters, like nobody's perfect in any of these films. There's no real good guy, so to speak. It's just kind of they are who they are, flaws and all. Cool. Last pick, SJS.
There are so many films that I could go with, but yeah, again, one of my kind of rabbit holes and themes of my watching lately has been both like Japanese cinema, but even more recently rewatching films. So I rewatched one of my favorite Japanese films like a few days ago. I was inspired to rewatch it due to the fact that we are talking about Funeral Parade of Roses, as it's a bit similar. So it's Nagisa Oshima's final film called Taboo in English, but I prefer the Japanese title Kohato. I think that's a way cooler title. So this basically is situated in a samurai establishment, and again Takeshi Kitano plays this great samurai leader in that samurai establishment. But one day they get this young 18-year-old guy coming there, and he's that beautiful looking guy, and then many of the samurai actually fall for this guy. So it explores like being gay in this kind of oppressive environment of like the samurai, this kind of ultra masculine environment. So it's a very interesting film in that way, and it's very interesting to have a samurai film like this that kind of goes against all the kind of rules of the samurai and all the kind of basic the mentality of the samurai, that is that ultra masculine badass thing that they all are, or they think they are. But this would be a kind of a good double bill, I guess, with Funeral Parade of Roses, or even with films like Harakiri, as it is a samurai film and it kind of criticizes the samurai code. But again, then in terms of genre, I think it's kind of like an action movie, because there are so many like sword fight scenes, and they are actually really well filmed. This came out in '99, so it looks really good in that way. And then when the film progresses, there is this kind of big thriller element, and we have to kind of guess who did this and who did that. So there are lots of these kind of genre bending in that film, but I think, again, I find the kind of the exploration of the sexuality under the oppressive structures like the most interesting thing about the film, and I feel like this is a fairly, again, underrated, unknown film because it isn't very much available. You cannot really watch this through any kind of official means. You have to look at kind of archival websites and stuff like that to find it, but I hope that Radiance or some people would release it. But I asked Daisuke once whether he had seen it, and in his live streams, and he had said that, again, it played even in the cinemas in New York when he was living there back when it came out, but for some reason, again, it's not really available on physical media, but hopefully someday. But a great movie if you can get your hands to it. I absolutely love it. So
yeah, I'm sure I saw it when it came out, and well, I saw it in the early 2000s, but I haven't seen it since. I mean, you'd think it would get released because, I mean, Kitano's in it and there's Asano not in it as well, so
yeah.
Oh, he is. Asano is, yeah. I can find a
of course,
DVD
before,
copy on Amazon.
Yeah, before battles, samurais would expel themselves into little boys as part of the ritual before battle. There was a whole set of young boys. That was their job to what's the best word to say? To provide a release for the samurai before they went into battle.
Nice. That's a strong
Nice.
recommendation there. That's one to add to the list. Yeah. Excellent. So from Renny Harlin to Oshima, like that.
Yeah. That sums up the process.
So. Indeed. Okay, so Ronin's last choice then?
This is embarrassing to him. I three of an English language. Bloody hell. This is Chopper.
You're never coming back.
This is one of the second Sight recent releases, along with the Ginger Snaps trilogy, which is excellent. It's actually one of the sneaky best trilogies, I think. But Chopper is based on a real life person, and you do get a glimpse of him in the extras, quite a character. But this is Eric Bana's coming out party. You could argue he never really went on to that great things, but he is completely hypnotic in this portrayal of essentially a psychopath, but obviously with certain issues going on. This was directed by Mark Dominic, who has went on to make more successful and bigger films. And he, in his conversation, he talks about how Australia aren't really interested in successful crime stories or big successful or big crime stories like heists and things like that, because in Australia crime is more disorganised than organised. So it's more about personalities and, you know, mishaps and misadventures rather than, you know, big successful heists and things like that and more organised. It jumps around in time. Well, this guy is essentially lowball, just a thug. But again, he just has so much charisma, and it is a film that Dominic admits it's all from Chopper's perspective. You know, it doesn't judge him. It's not about our view of him. It's about his view of him. But as I say, it's really for Bana's performance because he's absolutely hypnotic. I mean, it is funny. It's meant to be funny. Obviously, depending on your viewpoint of are we glamorising criminals or whatever, you might not think it's funny. Some of the events happened. Some of them were just kind of made up. So he would like shoot people and stab people, but then give them a run to the hospital. You know, he had all this conflicting stuff. So he'd do these acts of violence, but then he would immediately be remorseful and he'd immediately be sorry. I mean, obviously it's a interesting psychological portrayal of somebody that's obviously disturbed, because when the real guy actually saw the film later, he kind of understood, you've actually nailed it, because that's what I'm like, and I never really knew until I saw the film what my behaviour is actually like. So I am like obviously disturbed and psychopathic, but then immediately apologising for stuff and immediately taking people to the hospital after you've shot them and stuff like that, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But so it is a fascinating film. It's only an hour and a half. The final shots are really powerful. You know, the guy's a scumbag, but as I said, he's hypnotic. He does have charisma. So it's a really interesting film as far as a psychological portrayal of obviously somebody who's mentally disturbed. And as I say, it's one of those great performances that led to other things, the same way Romper Stomper did for Russell Crowe. But Eric Bana's phenomenal in it, and you could argue he's never actually been any better.
Yeah. Interesting. As you're talking about Australia there and crime, etc. Like that, for a country that basically was a penal colony, you know, in terms of colonization, you know, at the start, is kind of where it starts from. They do have an interesting depiction of a lot of that kind of stuff on film. Even something like The Proposition is a very different Western crime film in its own right. You know, it's a very interesting take on that, and something that's all the more better for it. I've seen Chopper years ago, like a long time ago, and it is something that I really have to revisit. But I do have this idea that when I seen who Eric Bana was in later films in Hollywood, when he was, let's say, an awful lot skinnier and an awful lot more leading manish, you know, this kind of transformation that he had for the role of Chopper was really something else, you know.
But I would argue he's been really bland in his Hollywood career. And he's just kind of there in films, whereas he just takes over the screen in this. And it does have something in common with the film we're going to talk about, as far as there is fourth wall breaking and there is kind of a playful sense. And Dominic does use different camera techniques and different kind of storytelling techniques. So it's not just we're going to shoot this as a somber kind of true life crime. It's not like that. It's much more peppy and much more to it, I think.
Yeah. The kind of anti-hero kind of thing that I think it was sold to me as originally. Another great choice. I'm going to finish with one of those kind of shameful, I hadn't seen this before movies, but since it was turned November and we're turning into noir season, I thought now would be a good time to watch Sweet Smell of Success by Alexander McKendrick, which all-time classic movie, which I had never seen, with Tony Curtis, Burt Lancaster, etc. I assume both of you have seen this. This would have been on a list for SJS to have picked off a long while ago.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. So, yeah.
It's just about
again a film way ahead of its time in terms of like toxic masculinity is the bit that I put in my Letterboxd review. I think is very much, you know, everybody's toxic in a male capacity in this. Even the sort of good guy has his toxic moments in it, and this kind of I think very well told story of somebody whose ambition is clouding his decency, so to speak. So Tony Curtis's character is press agent, and he is so desperate to be famed and be the man about town, about people to respect and know him, that he will basically sell his morals, his principles for that to a guy who has already decided to do that years ago, which is J.J. Hunsaker, which is Burt Lancaster's character, in what is probably the most understated Lancaster performance I can think I've ever seen. He's very, very withdrawn in it, but has that power that Lancaster carries in terms of his performances. I mean, it was quite brilliant in a lot of ways, and I sort of felt bad that I'd watched it at the start of my noir watching in November, because, like, where do you go after Sweet Smell of Success?
Yeah,
it has a very kind of... it has a very kind of deep criticism of the core American values of like that patriarchal capitalism that they had in that mid-20th century, and still have, of course, in a bit of a different way. And I just absolutely love it also stylistically, how just everything is so slimy and dark and ugly, both the people but also the environment. Like everything is just dark and awful, and I kind of am so impressed that they made a film like that in the 50s, kind of going against all the norms in Hollywood. And that's why I really love that film in a very way, as someone who has kind of gotten bored of the candy floss classic Hollywood. Because again, I used to love that too, but not really anymore. But this really dark stuff that actually has lots of depth to it, and these disgusting characters, this type of stuff I can still get behind. And I always say that this might actually be like one of the like top 5 American films of all time. It's like that level of amazing. It's just such a big masterpiece, and need to rewatch it. I mean, I've watched it a couple of times, but not in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it goes after celebrity culture and worshipping celebrity as well. I mean, as you say, Lancaster perhaps doesn't say much, and he doesn't appear for like 15 minutes. It's just the threat of him, and he does carry a threat with him.
That's right.
And those glasses. It's also arguably in the top 5 quotable films of all time. Everybody knows Manny Davis apart from Mrs. Manny Davis. It's just so good. And again, for me, if you take Touch of Evil and Sweet Smell of Success, they're arguably the 2 most black and white films.
Yes.
Shot by James Wong Howe. It's just beautifully photographed. And again, Tony Curtis, who's supposed to be the good guy, his relationship with that poor cigarette girl, basically pimping her out. It's just, yeah, so, and this is the person you're supposed to root for. And obviously the undertones of Lancaster's relationship with his sister. As SJS says, if that was made 10 years earlier, the Hays Code would have cut it to shreds.
Yeah, indeed. It's so many interesting. It'd be an interesting film to do a deep dive on, because there's a lot. Like SJS put it quite nicely, it's one of the predominant kind of shooting of New York, but they don't do New York as a glamorous place. Like all the coffee shops and the kind of hangers around, the kind of very dirty, nasty side of American society, and even the commentary on that the senators, the elected representatives, are kind of pandering to JJ as well. All of that kind of stuff from 1950s America is so kind of true about this is how America really works. This is how things really do, and that actually column inches are really what it was all about, like the power of media through a film, as it was, and especially from a director like McKendrick, who was kind of the anti-establishment kind of person. They like Lancaster very famously fired him from a movie as well. In terms of being a director, he's even in the extras, he's kind of celebrating him, but also criticizing him, for being kind of being too good almost at his job, or being too perfectionist. So
yeah, because he didn't make that many films. So.
Yeah,
and it does have one of the best scenes round the table at the start. The kind of introductory scene of JJ is just amazing, as you say, with the senator, and how quick JJ is to look and see who's this girl you're walking about town with, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, so brilliant start to my Noirvember, if nothing else, and one that was nice tick off the to watch list. Just another probably 100 of the top 250 movies of all time still to see. I've got loads of years left. I'm fine.
Yes,
I can do. So that's our that's what we've been watching recently. Hopefully plenty of recommendations there for people to get their teeth into, from the good, the bad, the ridiculous, right the way across, the scary to the thinking man or otherwise. And we're on the
Renny Harlin is for everybody.
Yeah, well,
he's universal.
One of the great exports of your fine country, that's the way it goes. Renny Harlin, is a joy. I did watch, as I was saying to you, I did watch a Cliffhanger recently, just to remind myself of, how great cinema used to be.
Yeah, existential masterpiece.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. So, on to something new, stuff that's coming out in the next while. I've made a list of stuff coming out November 13th to the 20th. I mean, I don't know about you guys. This is supposed to be holiday band season, and maybe the stuff that that is the desirable has already been released. And I think that's kind of, we do like a conversation piece around that. Like if you're thinking about coming towards the end of the year, I think us as collectors and a lot of movie watchers are kind of looking for projects, you know, for the new year. So the bigger box sets that have come out, the kind of directors that you want to get into, like for instance, the Hellraiser 4-film box sets just come out from Arrow, etc. There's Child's Play is going to come out before the end of the year, that kind of stuff. Are there any box sets that you have your eye on for the rest of the year, or things that maybe just came out that you think, oh, I have to find that somewhere along the side? Here. That's worth more than gold at the moment. That version. So for those in audio, Ronin is holding up the Arrow store exclusive Hellraiser with the, like, I don't know how they can charge so much money now for things. The chat, yeah, indeed, the chatterbox. They've taken a hole out of the side of the cardboard, and apparently that's expensive.
Yeah. But the interesting thing for me is number 4. They've included the work print, which goes in chronological order rather than jumping about, and I think it's actually better. I mean, I know that's because it's not a great film or anything, but
better.
I think it is better, because I've always had a soft spot for Bloodline.
So I've got to admit, I only watched. Oh yeah.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I have to admit, I only watched Hellraiser for the first film last month, and I hate to be that person. I mean, it's quite good, isn't it? You know, just saying, and also quite scary. Like, somebody had asked what the scariest movie I'd actually watched all October was, and like, I'd seen The Exorcist. Like, I think Hellraiser is just unsettling the whole way through. I actually think it's kind of amazing in that way, but anyway, there you go. So, lots more movies than series to watch.
I watched them as a kid with my father because he was a fan of, I think, at least the first one, but I really don't remember anything about them, and I'm not sure whether I watched all of them or just some of them, but I've at least seen the first one, definitely. Yeah.
I prefer the ideas behind it. I just think Barker, to some extent, is a little bit like Lovecraft, and it's hard to film stuff, because obviously Hellraiser, it's about pushing the envelope. And again, even with Barker directing, I'm not quite sure it really reaches what the novella was. So I think Barker is always going to be, or Barker adaptations are never going to be as good as the books. But that's just me. But I just enjoy the films. I've got to say it enough times.
Yeah, just what the world needed was another Hellraiser box set, for sure.
Yeah.
But the question that you're going to answer...
Yeah, the only one would be the Vim Vendors if it ever gets cheaper. I think it's down at 170 at the moment. But if it ever gets to like 130 or 120, then maybe. But
yeah.
No, well, for me, again, I haven't gotten any Radiance releases yet, but I've been like really drooling over them. So hopefully I can get some of them at some point. But the comedy, like the Italian comedies box set that has Il Sorpasso, that one I would love to get at some point, because Il Sorpasso is one of my favorite films of all time, but I haven't seen the other 2 films in the box set, so I don't know whether they are good or not, but I'm very interested in that box set, so hopefully I can get it at some point, but I don't know.
Yeah, they're both really good. One of them is better than the other one, but it's well worth getting, as is the Franco Nero Costa Nostra set.
Oh yeah. And you get World Noir coming out as well on the Radiance soon as well.
Polish set as well.
Polish sci-fi trilogy, or
sci-fi.
3 films. Yeah, because the 4th film came out, Vinegar.
I've seen one film from that called, is it like Obi Oba or something like that? Yeah. And it's a very interesting sci-fi film. But I haven't seen the other films, but it seems like a very interesting box set. Kind of like the Zulavsky box set was from Eureka fairly recently. And that one I obviously managed to get, fortunately.
And as we all know, I hate to be the person that's a shill for this company, but those imprint box sets, like, I mean, they've got the Lumet one coming out, which I actually am going to stay well away from, because I have actually most of those films from some other source and pretty good release.
Yeah, I've pre-ordered it because I've only got one of them, bizarrely.
Oh, right, okay. So that's good. I pawnbroker and stuff from BFIs and stuff already, so I've got that one.
Yeah,
But the
pawnbrokers
Marlon
are-
Brando, the Marlon Brando set is one that is calling my name on an ongoing basis. Even though I have One Eye Jacks, obviously, on the Arrow Academy, but it's one. But I agree that Bender set is something I keep on eyeing out of the side of my eye, kind of going.
Yeah. It fluctuates quite a lot on Amazon.
Yeah.
I think it's down
Although
170 at the moment, but that's still too much. So.
I get bullied on a daily basis by, people who've been on the podcast recently, Nathan, Sam, Elliot. They're just talking about that bloody Von Trier box set constantly every day. And now they all have it, and they're like talking about it, and I'm like, I just haven't got it. And I'm trying to, those Curzon releases are interesting, because Curzon, I think, as a film or a firm, are known for just doing bare bones releases and quite nice packaging. But I think the Von Trier box set and the Venus box set have got absolute crap tons of extras in terms of like the book and stuff as well. And they've done the Austin set, and obviously the 3 colours as well in those kind of fabric-y things. So I want them all.
I've still got a couple of Von Trier in the backlog, so I'm not going to bother about the box set until I've actually seen one of these films. That actually
I'm not a fan of him. He seems to me like a 16-year-old teenager who's too much into Nietzsche and Kierkegaard. But he's such an asshole. Like, I just cannot get myself to watch the films, even though I have so many of them on my backlog.
Yeah, because I love half of Melancholy, but then I don't like the other half. So
Like stepping
I'll
outside
still
the
to
comfort
see
zone.
Breaking the Waves and House that Jack built and stuff. So.
Yeah. So there's lots to get stuck into there in some regards, and then nobody mentioned Child's Play. Interesting. Anyway, there you go.
No. Well, King and Country's coming out on Monday with Losey,
right,
which
so
I'll
that's Joseph
have
Losey.
to pick up, even though I've got another Blu-ray release of it, and then Michael Pill's Bluebeard's Castle is coming out
That's
20th
right.
of November, BFI.
That's right.
Indicator are doing the Todd Slaughter box set. So
Which I have. Yeah. Interestingly, I think towards the end of the year, it's BFI, the Bluebird's Castle, and also they have Ghost Stories for Christmas Volume 2 coming out as well this Christmas as well. I think they are 2 of the very most interesting releases of pre-Christmas, so to speak. I got the Ozu collection, although it only arrived, I think, yesterday. So I haven't got digging into that yet, but pretty strong end of the year from BFI. For sure.
One that I'm looking forward to that comes out like a week before Christmas Eve, I think, or Christmas Day, is like Radiance's Elegant Beast, released by Yucho Kawashima. Okay, that sounds like my type of film. And then on January they release another Japanese film called I the Executioner by Taikato. So that sounds another one that sounds very interesting and fascinating.
And Third Window are releasing the Typhoon Club films
Typhoon
in
Club,
November,
yes,
so
indeed.
I've pre-ordered them as well. So they're kind of lesser known films. As well. So I'm looking forward to that.
I watched one film from that director Shinji Somai called Lost Chapter of Snow Passion or something like that, weird name, but it was pretty interesting and stylistically beautiful. So I think the Typhoon Club will probably be like very interesting release and interesting films. So yeah.
And
I
we're
did
releasing
watch.
the Coffin Joe box set.
Oh, that's right. It's one to stream for me. Test them out.
Yeah.
See what they're like. I did watch Guard from Underground, which was Kiyoshi Kurosawa's debut feature from that director's company line from Third Window as well. I mean, if ever there was a film that showed the importance of music in a film, The Guard from Underground or The Guard from Hell is exactly that one. The soundtrack or score to it is so wrong, and it takes away all of the what would be dread. It's like this kind of really almost like a Nintendo soundtrack, like, and it's almost chiptune. It's so bizarre and so weird.
Yeah.
I just kind of think if somebody replaced the entire thing, like Kurosawa, I think is very dismissive of it in so far as he doesn't think he was very good at that stage. But I think you can see a lot of stuff that made him good. He had a lot of good ideas, but it's so undermined by this ridiculous, atmosphere stripping soundtrack that kind of goes. It's like one of the Ghost Castle lessons from Mario. Runs through the back of it. But like, I think at the same stage, it's sort of fascinating when you see the kind of heights that Kurosawa then went on to in J-horror and that kind of stuff, and you kind of go, okay, I see it. So those kind of early films, I love seeing that kind of the ideas of the genesis as filmmakers kind of going through, which is why those kind of legacy box sets like Vendors, like Von Trier, etc., are always really interesting, because it's not so much about the final bit, it's about earlier on. Yeah.
Yes, but if you want to see a film that matches soundtrack and what's on the screen, then you should check out Renny Harlin's The Covenant.
Yeah, that's
See?
true. Again,
Perfect match.
awful new metal with these frat boy assholes. I mean, that's just, yeah, you cannot get better than that. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, not because it's something I'm looking forward to, but I'm looking forward to watching. This is your fault, Chris.
You are welcome. Like, you got a slipcover where I didn't. You know, that's all we'll say about that. It's a very, very good film, Gina, from CIP. That talked about in a watch list recently.
Yeah. And I accidentally picked up another CIP release.
Accidentally. Oh,
Accidentally.
yes.
So I'll see what that's like as well.
The man who is now Vinegar Syndrome partner label, you know, looking to be complete as far as I can see in certain labels.
No, definitely not. Slipcovers mean nothing to me.
You've changed.
I could add to that that the Death Crocodile releases are something that I'm also really interested in, and hopefully can get some of them. The film Sampo, it really interests me because it has that Finnish background and mix of Finnish and Russian, so that would be interesting. And you can hear the correct pronunciation for it. Sampo. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Yeah.
Well, not to take over the show with Death Crocodile, but I got Cat City in, their latest release. So I'll be watching that, and they announced that the Mysterious Castle in the Carpathians is coming to Death Crocodile.
That's right.
So I'll be able to get rid of this limited edition bit of cardboard edition that I've got. So I'm looking forward to that, because the Mysterious Castle in the Carpathians is a lot of fun as well.
Interesting. You must be getting paid a fortune by Death Crocodile these days. Like, honestly.
Well, interestingly, I'm actually going to mention something about Death Crocodile when we discuss SJS's film.
Oh, interesting. Well, before we segue to that too much, indeed, like, we are coming to this season where people will be thinking about, you know, things to stick on their Christmas list, or things that are. Have you got a recommendation for what things that you've watched this year that have come out that maybe people should be adding to their Christmas list, or things they should be picking up before the end of the year? For the two, is there anything that you've picked up over the course of the year? Could be something you've done a review about or something beforehand. For
me, because Criterion seems to have found a new lease of life for releasing stuff in the UK, and if you are 4K, even if you're not 4K, I would certainly recommend After Hours and One False Move. I think everybody should buy One False Move just to show some support for Carl Franklin for making two of the best American films in the 90s with Double Blue Dress and One False Move.
Well, I'm gonna recommend a Criterion US release, which I actually don't have, but I love the two films that are on that set or release. So it's the Marguerite Duras release that has India Song and Baxter Vera Baxter. Again, India Song is one of my favorites, and Marguerite Duras actually wrote the screenplay for Hiroshima Mon Amour, so that's her most famous thing in the cinema world. But she was obviously a very famous author as well, but her films are very, very interesting, very challenging, so I cannot really recommend them to everybody. But if you like films like Hiroshima Mon Amour or Last Year at Marienbad, or those kind of very abstract, difficult films about, again, identity and things like that, I think you would like India Song and Baxter Vera Baxter, so I would highly recommend that one.
I've always got my eye out for that Duras double bill set. I haven't seen it on eBay anywhere, for Anyway Decent, but it is definitely on the list. It definitely intrigues me. For very much the reasons that you say, like last year Marion Bad, Hiroshima Mon Amour, both like interesting screenplays as well as like phenomenally interestingly made films by Renee. And yet nobody has mentioned Oppenheimer. I don't know. There you go. That's coming out as well.
Yeah.
Haven't seen
I
it,
think
to be fair.
somebody's mentioned that in the past, but I'm sure within 2 years it will be forgotten about anyway.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
They'll be on to the next thing. So.
Christopher Nolan, SJS's favourite director.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine how tough it is for me when like a new Nolan film comes out, when I have to listen to that praise for months on end, and I absolutely kind of despise that guy's films. And again, I try to be not to be snobby because I just did another podcast where we went against snobbery, but I'm sorry, I just cannot get the Christopher Nolan hype. But again, good for the people who like him. I'm really happy for you. I want to be the good guy these days. I've made lots of personal growth. So again, I'm happy for you guys. Watch the Oppenheimers, watch the Prestige, watch the Dark Knight. I'm not gonna watch them anymore, but you watch them and enjoy them. But yeah,
Cinema for everybody.
That's a powerful message. That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
You've grown so much and changed, SJS. Like honestly, where's the angry young man that used to be banging the table at certain stages about those things?
Yeah.
Which is a great segue for being angry and all that kind of stuff to our choice of the month, or of the week, should I say, the film that's been picked by our guest here, by SJS. I'll do the introduction by saying it's a 1969 movie by Toshio Matsumoto, which runs for 105 minutes, that has a 7.8 on IMDb, a 4.3 on Letterboxd. I think that might be the highest average that we've had for a movie that we've talked about so far. And it even has 100% on the tomato meter in Rotten Tomatoes. What is the movie, SJS? It's
Funeral Parade of Roses, and it has the same average rating on Letterboxd as The Departed, 4.3. So that's a nice thing to mention.
The serendipity is incredible.
No, I see why you
beautiful cover art here again. Yeah.
It's basically the same
why
film
did
as
you
Departed,
pick it?
so.
Well, I have multiple reasons. Again, it's from my favorite country for cinema, Japan. It's from my favorite decade for cinema, 1960s. It's from my favorite movement in cinema history, Japanese New Wave. And I also love queer cinema. As I'm queer, I can relate to them. I like them. And also, I was kind of gonna rewatch this film anyway. This year, I had planned to watch it in summer during like Pride Month, but then I hadn't. Then I was in a film slump back then, so I didn't watch anything really then, and all my plans went out of the window. But I'm glad that I was able to rewatch it now, and it was a great experience. I loved it way more now, and again, it's a lots of ways kind of personal film to talk about, so it's kind of awkward in a way. But I kind of watched this. I've watched it 2 times in a very different periods of my life. So it was like very liberating to watch it now, because the first time I watched it, again, I was still in the closet. I hadn't accepted myself back then, but now, as I'm more accepting of myself, I watched it again. So it felt like very liberating. But even back then, I liked it, but I was only kind of looking at the great style and everything like that. But now I was kind of looking more about the things that it was saying and connecting it to those things more. But I love the style as well, and that's why I love the Japanese New Wave and the Art Theater Guild films, because they have that crazy experimental style that I really connect to, because I love these types of films that go against all the norms and the rules and challenge us in every possible way. Again, some of the experiments don't always work, but I think in this film pretty much everything works, but you can nitpick some of the things in it. Yeah.
What do you think, Ronin?
You want to say something now too?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I watched it, I gave it a 4, but now I've given it a 5. Not that really matters. It might be a slightly flawed 5, but I think it's still a 5. We watch so many films nowadays that are just play it safe, play it by the rules, everything's predictable, whereas cinema should be limitless, and the techniques you use should be limitless. I mean, here, sped up films used, speech bubbles are used, photographs are used, fourth wall breaking, literally. It's just a stunning piece of work, and you can try different things. And again, there shouldn't be any rules with cinema, apart from what it's about as well. Is important. It does have one of the great reveals, and to me, watching it again, I mean, obviously you could almost look at it as a kind of fairy tale. Obviously, there's a Snow White reference in it. There's obviously lots of mirrors about looking at yourself, looking about your identity. In some ways, it could almost be looked at as a Japanese pohebke or the Czech kind of fairy tale thing. Watching it again, I did get Bergman out of it. There's a lot of kind of Bergman's 60s more experimental stuff in it. I used to have a trans hairdresser, and she certainly told me lots of tales about her experiences in her life, so I can identify with the character, but I can certainly identify with some of what the character goes through. It's just a stunning piece of work, but again, if you're used to traditional Japanese films, with perfect compositions and kind of very stiff characters perhaps, then this will blow your doors off in the same way that Yakuza films of the 60s just kind of did shaky cam and just kind of completely not destroyed the rules, but certainly broke all the rules.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating movie. I remember watching it and kind of just going along for the ride the first time and kind of experiencing it as it goes through. And actually, the second time that I get to watch it this time for this was such a different experience. Kind of deconstructing it a little bit to see how it was made and the kind of techniques and things they're doing. Because essentially, it's a fairly simple story of this character Eddie, who works in a gentleman's club for transvestites, where we assume married men come and then frequent and spend their money and their time with these people. He obviously has some trauma in his background that is kind of explored through these kind of flashbacks, repeated flashbacks that are through. But it is a film that plays a lot with what do you think you see, what do you think is happening, what do you think is doing on a stage, and playing with the form of cinema. So, like, even the idea Eddie himself never gets revealed or shown to be a male until like nearly halfway through the film. In some ways, he always appears as the female version of himself, dressed up, kind of without, aside from a couple of scenes where you see him as a very young man, as it is at the time. So, like, that part of it I think is really interesting, and then they play with the chronology quite a lot as well, in terms of play with the chronology in terms of cutting back and forward. They never really tell you what's happening now or what's happening in the past or anything like that. You kind of move through time in terms of, you see the mother at the start, you don't know where she is in the mix of whether that's current or otherwise. And it's also a film that sort of ends twice, because I think the first revelation that you kind of get, or what you think is the big revelation, is about the murder of the mother, and that in a lot of other films that would be the end of the movie. That would be the thing of, oh my god, that's what the flashback's about, that's what it's all about, that's where his trauma comes from. But it doubles down on that even more, kind of this kind of poor trauma that this person's life and how destroyed that it's been in what is a very glamorous setting to the outside world, but actually internally is just a mess. But it's such a brilliantly made movie in terms of the story that it tries to tell, the characters that it tries to portray, and then all that fourth wall breaking stuff of
on you go.
What they do.
Okay, so I'll start with like the interviews. Obviously, this film has lots of those interviews where we interview these characters, and of course, this film it's very progressive for the time, and in some ways still is. But some of the interview questions are actually, even though I think they come from a very good place, I think are very ignorant, because they ask like, why do you choose to be this way? Because it's not a choice, you just are that way. So it's in like a very ignorant thing to ask, but of course for the time, and as it comes from a good and like curious place, I don't mind it, but I think it's something to mention. And then one of the, I think, very important things about this film, one of the kind of themes, is when they talk about like wearing the masks and things like that. Again, that I think there's some line that some people wear just one mask their whole life, but some people wear multiple masks, and obviously that's the kind of reality for queer people, that there is these different stages of your life when you wear different masks. Like, again, before you come out, you have that straight mask on, then you come out, and then you have that kind of more authentic mask, but then you have the expectations from all the other people that kind of can create another mask for you, and even after that it can be really hard to be yourself. So I think the mask part is very interesting in this film. And I think we should at some point speak a bit about this booklet. I think this booklet is really good, as it goes through like lots of different things about like Japanese history, and it actually makes one point at some point that apparently, like at some point in Japanese history, like before the Americans ever came there, it was actually pretty normal to be like gay, for example. I don't know how true that it is, but in one of the essays it says something like that. And these essays also kind of take the conversation to the real world in many ways, because they talk about the kind of Japanese queer culture in Tokyo, because many people don't know this, but Tokyo actually has the largest queer district in the whole world in real life, called Nichome in Shinjuku, which is one of the bucket list item for me for the future. But they talk about that in the booklet, and I think it's very interesting how they manage to talk about the film, but also bring it to the real life, and that makes these essays kind of more powerful, and also this film more relatable when the essays do that. And I also kind of like how they shoot this main character Eddie. And there are lots of these shots about like bodies and hands and faces, and I think it's done in a very beautiful way, and I absolutely love that type of stuff in films. And again, as Ronin also talked about in the beginning, that how they play with the structure. So sometimes Eddie is actually the actor, the real life actor when they interview
That's right,
Eddie, but sometimes it's the character. So it's very interesting to analyze the film structurally. There are so many things going on in this film that one could talk about, but okay, those are some kind of major things that I thought about when I watched this and read the booklet. Yeah.
Well, all I was going to say is that actor that plays Gondo obviously played in lots of Kurosawa films and Godzilla films, so something in between.
Okay. The fourth wall breaking bit that I was going to talk about was very much about, again, it happens for the first time. You know, when the camera crew shooting the scene, and I kind of thought, like, why do that at that stage? And I think it's because I think a lot of it is shot a bit like a docudrama, you know, in so much as that actually this feels like it's just intrusive, you know, and it's kind of peel back and say, no, this is fictionalized. But I also think Matsumoto plays with that a lot throughout the thing. When he does it, the interview of Peter, then as Eddie, to kind of say, look, oh, why were you drawn to this role? And he says, because this is my life, you know, in some ways, and it is that kind of mashing of, you know, reality and fictionalized universe to kind of say that's going to happen. And even when I was listening to the commentary of this, the fact that they didn't get permits for any of these shots, so the people that are in the scenes on the street were just people in the streets of Japan, so they were shooting this stuff and kind of seeing the reaction to it. And especially the last scene when he walks out, you know, that again, no permit for that. That's kind of like, what the hell's going on here? There's just blood streaming out of somebody's eyes, all of that kind of stuff, all really weird. The other thing that really strikes me about the whole film is, and this is no great surprise, like the film is sort of about sexuality in a lot of ways, but the most interesting sexuality part of it, I think, is actually between the mother and the son relationship. You know, when they're sitting around together, and you've got that thing where the mother's laughing at him for him not understanding why she wants male liaisons, etc. He doesn't see her as a sexual being in any way, so her reaction to him, he takes in a different way than what she means it. And subsequently, you know, the mother to him, she doesn't respect his sexuality, and so they kind of, their relationship basically breaks down because now the two of them see each other for the human being or the sexual being that they are, and how important that it is in makeup of their humanity, and obviously leads to tragedy then at the end. So there's like so much deep thematic kind of questions that are asked throughout the whole film, and like as SJS says, like this really progressive way, like for 1969, like massive like big questions that were brought up.
Yeah, one thing I was also gonna say about again sexuality and gender identity too, that this film really shows that kind of fluidity of everybody's sexuality and gender identity, how it can it isn't always like very rigid and just one thing, but it can be different things, and you can express yourself in such multiple types of ways. And also one thing that kind of shows this is that we don't like necessarily like fully know what type of person Eddie is. That okay, we know that Eddie is trans and gay, but we don't know all the details about it, so that kind of shows the fluidity of the expression. And of course you also mentioned the progressiveness of this film again. So again, Japan is of course a very conservative country, but it's still like one of the better countries in the world for queer people, because Japanese people are still like very polite, and they are not gonna like jump you or anything like that, but you might just get like weird looks and stuff like that. Again, this is actually something that I've kind of researched a lot on my own time, just as I'm really interested in it. But so I could add a lot to this, like out of that too. But I guess it's better to focus more on the film. But yeah, again, what a great film, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how Japan's attitude to the queer community is in comparison to the attitude to women.
That's interesting. Yeah.
As far as who gets it rougher.
Yeah. I think there's some of the most interesting scenes are you know, one of the most interesting scenes is those communal scenes, you know, when they're all together. And the other scenes with, I'll just call them the Guevara scenes, you know, the man who actually does wear the mask, he basically puts on the facial hair to be representative of Che Guevara. But you know the scene where they have like the party at the end, and it's sort of only revealed at that stage that everybody else in the room actually what gender everybody else is when they're naked. And that's the only time you can really see what gender people are. So the people that you assumed actually were female, that actually turned out to be male, and then, you know, similar kind of thing. And I think a lot of that stripping back so interesting, because it does play with that kind of idea of what you see is what people want you to see, you know, that kind of when somebody represents to you physically. And even when they are walking through the streets as the three, you know, Eddie would get harangued by male men who obviously think he's female, you know, in terms of that very attractive female, yet when they're walking the three of them together they get harangued for being transvestites, you know, in the same way, because as a group, as a collective, they're much more easier to spot, you know. All of that kind of stuff's like sort of fascinating in terms of like a storytelling mechanism and all that kind of stuff. I like, the film just blows me away in so many ways of how the different types of ways that it looks at identity and kind of self, and even the use of a mirror, as in when people look in the mirror, you know, what they see when they're reflected back is not what everybody else sees when they reflect back. It's just fascinating.
Well, I was just gonna make this quick kind of joke that I can imagine what the boomers are thinking when they watch this. Like, what the fuck are these guys thinking? What the fuck are they talking about? Like, with the fluidity and these types of things. I wonder which are the people who are gonna watch this stuff. But again, yeah, you go ahead now.
I was just massive who obviously wanted to challenge people and show that everybody's not necessarily the same, but everybody's human. That's why at the end of that party, some of the members are from the crew, because he just wanted everybody to be relaxed and everybody to kind of share the experience. So the crew joins in with that. I do think the whole artificiality of Guevara's beard, I don't know whether that's actually a statement on what he feels about the underground movement. The fact that, is it fake? Is it kind of middle class people, you know, protesting and pretending to protest, but it's not actually genuine and it's not actually true. I mean, the protest in the street that they see wasn't staged. That was just a protest that they happened to catch on camera. You know, when Eddie's just watching from a distance, that was actually a protest that just happened to be going on by a specific group. I can't remember their name. But again, it's also how does Matsumoto feel about that kind of underground movement himself with the fake beard, whether that's actually more than just a sight gag.
I thought the beard, the Che Guevara beard, was almost like a challenge to the audience to say, look, if you're not comfortable with kind of the other stuff that I'm talking about here, I bet you find the fact that he wears a beard representative as a popular character like Che Guevara kind of okay then. You know what I mean? But what's the difference? Like, what's the difference in a lot of ways? You know, if you think this is acceptable, because he does make a large point, I think, is showing that it is stick on, because he does the flashing with it on and off to kind of say, look, if this, like, why would anybody have a problem with anything else? You know, people represent themselves how they want or the way they see themselves. And even the conversations of, like, do you like girls? No, I like being a girl. That conversation, an interview that's in there. So kind of this meshing of the conversations with the fictionalized, with kind of the imagery that's all gone along, all kind of plays together to kind of create this very challenging but kind of interesting narrative for the person watching to follow.
Yeah, it's all about projections and reflections.
Yeah, I think again the beard kind of adds to the conversation that we have about the people having masks and performing these certain roles, whether they are authentic or not. Again, to use a very academic word, performativity, that again Judith Butler came up with, again to cringe more people. Be this again, I'm kind of putting my snobby elitist persona here in place once again. But yeah, I think it's more of that mask conversation, just like the other mask thing in the film. But yeah, it's very interesting how there is so much other kind of politics here as well. But again, Japanese New Wave is known for being like incredibly political and saying kind of fuck you to the older generation of filmmakers and people, and just taking everything up to 11 in terms of being radical. And this also, I watched one of like Matsumoto's interviews on YouTube last night in preparation, and he talked about how, again, this film was the start of like the gay culture coming to be seen by other people. It was in hiding before this, so he wanted to kind of document the start of this phenomena happening. And he also talked about how it also, I think the kind of same happened obviously in America with the hippie stuff and everything like that. And I think one thing we did mention is that, again, this was very much kind of inspired by the Pasolini film Oedipus Rex, and also the ancient Greek plays, the Oedipus stuff. So that's also very interesting. And one kind of small reference in this film is also kind of the name of the bar. I think it's called Chenet, and Chenet is the kind of guy who wrote the book QRL that Fassbinder adapted, and he also made this like big experimental gay film in the 50s. Like, is it called Song of Love or something like that? Which is very interesting film too. So that's kind of a nice reference. I know that many people probably will see that, but maybe some people miss that. But yeah.
I'm just going to say, about 1969 the year this was made, and you brought the kind of idea about the hippies movement in America. It always strikes me like Easy Rider was 1969 as well, and how they represented, you know, the kind of attitudes in America to counterculture, and how people dealt with that in America, and yet you had Funeral Parade of Roses in Japan, and which we assume is a much more accepting society, or that's certainly not the story that he wanted to tell within this movie. Kind of... but sort of very violent ends in both cases.
Yeah, I was just going to say about about authenticity and who you really are, and just I love the details. The fact that when Gonda is putting these drugs into the plastic vase of plastic roses, obviously there is a through line of kind of pleasure and death, and the fact that you're putting drugs into a vase of roses, but of course the roses are fake. It's just little details, and also the Vietnam veteran, when he's having sex with Eddie, and then it pans down to a picture in his pocket, and it's him smiling next to two corpses, obviously in his army days. It's full of like little details like that as well throughout the film.
Leads me on to the character of Lita, who is the madam of the club, so to speak, and how she feels her sexuality or her role threatened by Eddie, who's the new hot thing in town, and when she's with Gonda, trying to examine their relationship and kind of going like, you're not attracted to that young hot thing. I mean, what we have is something deeper and more connective than just raw sexuality, and obviously he brushes it off, but that ultimately leads. I mean, that thought is what leads to her downfall as well, or his downfall. Again, scene to scene, moment to moment, there's so much going on in this film, and so many questions asked, and so many things that are talked about. It's brilliant. Yeah.
And also, I love the submerged cemetery as well.
Oh yeah, indeed. So, any other points?
Well, I think one thing about the structure. Yeah, one thing about the structure is interesting how they shoot the car scene a couple of times where Eddie is in the car with the guy, and we see that scene 2 times from different perspectives. So that's like very interesting in the structure of the film. But again, we have talked about the structure so much. There's like a million things to say about it. But yeah.
Yeah, I like how his flashbacks initially are very short because it's him or her shutting them out, but then some of the flashbacks are longer because she can't shut them out. I think that's just a really excellent way of actually showing flashbacks and bad memories. Sometimes you can put them to the back of your mind, sometimes you can't get rid of them.
Yeah. Fascinating. So was there a deaf crocodile reference you wanted to make, or did I miss it?
Oh, yes, yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, obviously there's the Eureka Masters of Cinema DVD as well as the BFI Blu-ray, but if you look at the credits, the acquisitions executive on the BFI was Dennis Bartok, who runs Deaf Crocodile, and because this is a Region B, it wouldn't shock me if Deaf Crocodile ended up getting the Region A release, because part of their remit, they said at the beginning, was to kind of have some LGBTQ films as well as their animation and other things. So it'd be interesting to see if Deaf Crocodile get the US release of it.
Yeah, it's interesting indeed. Be a bit of a tempo release for them, and a big one, because I think I said last episode, I think this is a film that would not look out of place in the Sight and Sound Top 100 in terms of films, and I think as time progresses on, I think it's the kind of film that, as it gets more exposure, will get talked more in those kind of circles, I think.
Yeah, I'm so happy with the Letterboxd score, and there's I think like over 50k ratings, so it's quite a lot for a film like this that is very challenging from the 60s, Japanese and queer. So that kind of makes me happy to see it. Yeah.
So a brilliant choice, SJS. Thanks very much for bringing it up. When you first presented the idea that you were going to talk about it, I was like, oh yes. For no other reason that I got to revisit it and kind of re-explore and reappraise it again. So very much thank you for that. Yeah,
again, I was kind of nervous to talk about it as it is kind of personal, but it went well, so I'm glad. Yeah,
that's good. It
was nice.
Cool. Lots to say about it, but that's the end of our episode. 6 hours flies by. It's just the way that it goes. See what it gets edited down to. Like it's it's nice. It's nice and easy. If anybody wanted to find you, SJS, and wanted to, didn't know about your bracket battles and the deep dive nature that they go to, where could they find you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube on SJSArts. On my channel, I talk about many different art forms, mostly films and music. but also some paintings here and there, and even books. But as I'm a very inconsistent reader, I don't always talk about books due to that fact. But I do these bracket battles where I put great films and great albums against each other, and then I pick my favorite out of them. It's this kind of very light-hearted fun that kind of combines this lowbrow approach with the bracket battle with this high art that I tend to talk about on my channel. And yeah, I just have always loved about making lists and rankings and choosing which is better. So again, that's kind of really fun thing to do, but I also do other things here and there. And there's one collaboration coming on my channel soon too, although it will probably be out before this one, but we'll see. And check out my discussion with Ronin as well. That was really fun, even though the topic is niche of the niche of the niche, or whatever Ronin always says. And also on Letterboxd, you can find me on SJSArts. Yeah.
Indeed. I'll put the links down in the description for that. And a great segue for Ronin to talk about what he's been doing recently, because he's been branching out as well. You've inspired a generation.
Yes, Solitary Ronin Films. I'm on Letterboxd as well. I think Solitary Ronin 1, I believe. Yeah, my channel is the usual rambling nonsense director series that I promise and never deliver. And I've recently started a series called Sevens with Ronin, because it's not solitary, and the two gentlemen here have been guests, and that's about music, because again, I would love to have a separate channel, but 24 hours is not enough. But you can go over and check out my rambling nonsense.
Excellent stuff. Well, again, I'll stick the links down to that, and I'll even link the wonderful death metal, thrash metal, or black metal. Sorry, it is not thrash metal, black metal. God, see, so many different types of metal.
There was lots of thrash metal there.
Right? Yeah. Indeed. Oh, we'll not go subcategories as well. So that's that. Next up, actually, on the next episode of the podcast, we're doing something slightly different in terms of we're not talking about a movie, we're talking about a TV series. Just live dangerously. We're going to talk about Doctor Who and a classic Doctor Who episode called Horror of Fang Rock. So if anybody has any questions about that, they can comments about that, they can stick it down in the comments this. I'll include it in the next episode. But I look forward to talking about that. And luckily, everything's just been added to the BBC iPlayer from the UK, so you can watch it on there as well. So if anybody's like, oh, I can't see it, and you can, VPN or otherwise, you can get that sorted out. And, you know, maybe if we invite SJS back on, we'll talk about why The Departed is better than Infernal First. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Take care. All the best. Bye.